Today I learned the average person has about 8 sexual partners in their lifetime. I also learned that I am a whore.
After a woman has a one-night stand, she can feel really good about herself, really happy, really empowered by that experience. Or she can feel really deeply ashamed, filled with regret. Why did I do that? What's going to cause the difference between these two emotional states? Why is sometimes she going to feel proud and sometimes ashamed? Luckily, science has the answer. In this video, I'm going to be referring to a recent research study called "Why Do Women Regret Casual Sex More Than Men Do?" Here's the short answer to that question. Women regret casual sex if they feel pressured, if she feels disgusted either by the act itself or by herself in committing that act, or if she's worried about risks of STDs, pregnancy, or damage to her reputation. All of those positively correlate with a woman feeling regret after casual sex. But sometimes women feel pride and pleasure after a one-night stand. Well, what are the factors that positively correlate with that? Again, the quick version is if they were gratified because they enjoyed the experience, if their partner was competent and he knew what he was doing, and if they were the initiator. That makes a big difference. If a woman was the one to initiate the sex, then she's way less likely to regret it afterwards. That's actually what the graph that you saw in the thumbnail was referring to. Check it out here. So you can see here that for men, whether or not they initiated the sex or not made very little difference to the level of regret that they felt. But for a woman, it made a huge difference. If they initiated, they're much less likely to feel regret. And you can see that here. That tracks pretty well with other data from the study that shows that if a woman feels pressured or coerced into the sex, then she's much more likely to feel regretful. So that's the short version. In order for a woman to feel good about a casual sex encounter, then she needs to have found it pleasurable and empowering. It needs to have been with a high quality man, and he must have been competent at what he was doing. I'm going to go into that in a lot more detail because this study has provided some really fascinating data that I want to explore with you guys. But just quickly first establishing the fundamentals. Hopefully it's not a shock to regular viewers of my channel that women are obviously going to regret casual sex more. That tracks with gender differences that we already understand. In this study, they researched men and women from America and also from Norway, and in both data samples, men were much less likely to regret casual sex than women. Reading from the study, in both the Norwegian and US sample, more men than women were glad they engaged in their most recent casual sex incident, while more women than men regretted having had casual sex somewhat or very much. If you look at the figures there, it's actually pretty rough. Only 31% of American women were actually happy with their last casual sex encounter. 50% flat out regret it. The data shows that men, at least statistically, are a lot more satisfied with their choices to engage in casual sex. Regular viewers of my channel understand why this is. It's a little bit cultural, but mostly it's biological. It's called the sexual strategies theory. As a quick summary of the evolutionary theory, being pregnant is a really big deal for a woman because it changes her body, it limits her future prospects for being with other men, it takes a huge physical toll as she has to give birth and then raise the infant, whereas for a man, he can have sex and get women pregnant and it doesn't have nearly as big a consequence for him. This is why you see men quite keen to engage in casual sex. Like, yeah, right, like I just want to pass on my genes as many women as possible. I don't really need to be that considerate or discerning about who I do that with. But for women, they need to pay close attention because they only want to have sex with the right guy who's got the right genes and is going to stick around and provide. I mean, this is essentially the difference between the two genders when it comes to their sexual expression. Men have millions of sperm and women just have that one egg, and so much stems from that. When the physical consequences for sex are so different for men and women, it makes sense why our sexual strategies and our minds have adapted to reflect those physical realities. You've probably heard that when it comes to sexual regret, women on the whole typically regret sexual encounters that they had, that they wish they hadn't had, whereas men are a lot more likely to regret the sexual opportunities that they didn't have, the chances that they missed, that they didn't take. So men and women have very different sexual strategies. We're trying to achieve different things, and I want you to keep that in mind when we look at the data from this study because it provides the appropriate context to reflect on all of these statistics. Okay, first off, look here at the difference in gratification because this is probably the biggest difference based on gender that they found. They found that men are much more likely to feel gratified by the sex that they had. No surprises there. So here in Norway, men were at a 3.37 of gratification and women were just a 2.34. And in the US, it's no better. Men are at a 3.85, whereas women are only at a 2.84. As a quick aside, I'm sorry, Norwegians, it looks like Americans across the board are having much more gratifying sex than you guys are. But while that difference statistically is really quite large, it's it's also not that much of a surprise. Like, we can imagine men who are having sex, they're loving it, they're having a great time. Women, not so much. I think the reason for that difference is biological. I think it has to do with the sexual strategies theory, but you could also put some cultural interpretations there as well. Like, I'm sure if you ask radical feminists, they'd say that's because men only care about their pleasure, so they're busy getting themselves gratified and they're leaving women unsatisfied. Maybe that's true in some cases. I bet if you ask the hardcore manosphere types, they'd probably say, well, this is just proof that women are impossible to please. You can never satisfy a woman. That's why they're so ungratified. I mean, who knows? It's probably a combination of all three plus a bunch of other factors. We can only really speculate. But the cold fact of the situation is that men are feeling more gratified in the sex that they're having casually, and that makes sense why they would regret it less than women. But next I want to look at worry, because you can see here and here that women are a lot more worried after casual sex than men are. So what are women worried about? Well, they're worried about pregnancy, they're worried about sexual diseases, and they're worried about damage to their reputation. But interestingly, the study found that actually only one of those worries was positively linked to a feeling of regret afterwards. So can you guess which one of those it was? Which worry is actually going to cause a woman to feel regretful after casual sex? The fear of pregnancy, the fear of diseases, or the fear of damage to her reputation? What's your best guess? Reading from the study, they found that worry about pregnancy or STIs did not predict sexual regret. Interestingly, worry about reputation was positively associated with regret of having had casual sex. Hopefully that doesn't surprise you too much, because it makes sense. In the modern age, we've got things like condoms to protect against pregnancy and the transmission of sexual diseases. But a condom can't possibly protect against damage to your reputation, and that's deeply ingrained in women's biology, because she fears what impact a damaged reputation is going to have on her capacity to attract a high-quality mate in the future. Because if she's known as a woman who has lots of casual sex, then no high-quality man is going to be with her because he's worried about paternity certainty. Oh, she sleeps with lots of men. How can I be sure that any children she has are going to be mine? It's one of the reasons why I really don't get on board with the cultural push to normalize promiscuity, as though it's completely acceptable and we should be encouraging people to just sleep with each other whenever they want, just following our whims, pure hedonism. Because we're not blank slates. Like, regrets were put in us by evolution for a reason. That fear that the woman might have of potentially damaging her reputation and compromising her capacity for future happiness is a very legitimate fear. She should have that regret. She should be concerned about that. And I'm not saying this to hate on women. I'm saying this as an advocate for women. It's not in your best interests. That's also a similar story with the next one we're going to discuss, which is disgust, because that also plays an important evolutionary purpose. Now, you can see here and here that women are more disgusted by casual sex than men. You're thinking, yeah, okay, women find sex disgusting. But no, that's actually not what's going on. They're finding it disgusting at greater levels than men, but probably not for the reason that you're thinking. Listen to the study talk about the three relevant dimensions of disgust. The sex was disgusting, it was unhygienic, and it was wrong/immoral. The analysis suggests that the moral disgust dimension was the most important. The association was stronger for women than it was for men. In layman's terms, when women say that the casual sex that they had was disgusting, they're not necessarily talking about the physical act itself. They're talking about how they felt about themselves making a compromised moral choice. It was disgusting that I went through with it. It's very common for women who are sleeping around a lot, being really promiscuous, to feel at a deep level disgusted by themselves. And that's in spite of the relentless third wave feminism propaganda, which tries to say that casual sex for women is really empowering. We should act like men, just sleep around with whoever we want, be not discerning about your partners, have fun, experiment. No, you can't erase a woman's biological instincts that easily. Deep down, every woman knows that her body is sacred, that she should cherish her body, that she shouldn't just give it up to absolutely anybody, that it's important. She knows that if she sleeps with the wrong man, some loser chump, she could potentially get pregnant by that guy and then get stuck with his children and his inferior genes. That's not what she wants. Sex for a woman can be really, really empowering when it's done with the right partner, but sharing your body, sharing your sexuality with some random hookup from the club is not empowering. If feminists truly cared about women, they would be encouraging a lot more restraint and telling women to only have sex with men who have truly deserved it, who've earned that right. I know that feminism is concerned about how much women have been shamed over the centuries for their sexual expression, and I'm sympathetic to that, but they're going about it the complete wrong way. Promoting promiscuity is not the right way out of this. If they really wanted to help women, they need to tell them to value their sexuality and only share it with men who've truly earned it. And I think that the data supports me, because when you read the research study here, you find out that women are a lot less likely to regret casual sex if the man was competent in the bedroom, if he knew what he was doing. Reading from the study, having had casual sex with a sexually skilled partner reduces sexual regret, particularly in women, as there might be a greater variance in gratification among women due to partners' competence than among men. Women who reported having had high-quality sex experienced less negative emotions following a casual sex experience. Hopefully, you're taking from that data the same thing that I am, which is that that's good news. If you don't want a woman to regret sleeping with you, then just do a good job. Make sure she's satisfied, have good sexual techniques, be good in the bedroom, and then it's not going to be a problem. Also see these data points here and here. You can see that women feel a lot more pressured into having sex, and that sucks. People should not be pressured into having sex. And it makes sense that men are pressuring women more likely because that's the sexual strategy, just trying to get off as often as we can with as many different women. I'm not defending that. I'm just explaining why that is. And so, of course, if a woman feels pressured or coerced into having sex, she's much more likely to regret it. That makes sense. And that also makes sense with the graph that we saw at the beginning of the video, because if you're more likely to initiate the sex, then you're less likely to regret it afterwards. But when you look at the table, the data that really sticks out to me is not the difference between men and women. It's actually the difference between Norwegian women and American women, because the women from Norway, you can see they're taking initiative at a rate of 3.06, whereas American women, they're only initiating sex at a rate of 2.37. That's a big difference. Norwegian women are sexually confident. They're going out there. They're trying to get what they want. They're actually more comfortable initiating sex than American men are, because the Norwegian women, they're at a rate of 3.06. But look here, the American men are only at a rate of 2.89. Is that crazy or what? Like Norwegian women are hornier than American men? Who would have guessed that? But before all you guys buy plane tickets to head to, the Scandinavian countries with all their sexually empowered women, have a look though. It doesn't tell the story that you necessarily think that it does, because while women are super comfortable taking the lead, and I'll agree that might sound like a good thing, remember what the statistics were on gratification, because you can see there that the American women are a lot more satisfied than the Norwegian women are. So is there a link between a woman doing the traditional man's role of initiating sex and her lack of satisfaction? Is there a correlation there? I'll leave that for you to decide. But having gone through the study and looked at all the data and statistics, hopefully now you can see that if a woman feels proud of her sexual encounter or if she feels ashamed, you know the reasons why that is. As you saw in that study, and as you hear repeatedly on this channel, men and women are different. We have evolved different priorities, different instincts. And so naturally, when you've got two different entities, somebody's going to ask the question, okay, so does it make sense to treat men and women differently? It's sort of a taboo discussion to have because nobody likes the idea of applying double standards, but let's just be adult about this for a moment. Doesn't it make sense to have some double standards if men and women are different? And when can that potentially go too far and just become hateful and tribalistic? Very explosive topic, very nuanced, not at all politically correct. But if that's the kind of thing that you enjoy sinking your teeth into, then you're going to want to check out my latest Patreon video because it's on that topic. When are double standards okay and when are they not? You might not know that for every video I post here on YouTube, I post an additional bonus video on my Patreon, which means that right now you only got access to half of the content that I'm releasing. If you want access to the other half, then come and sign over at my Patreon. It's just $7 a month. You get access to that video plus every other video in my back catalog. The value is absolutely tremendous. We have hundreds of videos, a whole library for you to check out. Or if you're experiencing difficulties in your dating life or in your relationship and you want my advice, my input, hit me up on Hey Hero, tell me what's going on for you, and I'll create a personalized video just for you. And lastly, if you really want to test your knowledge of this stuff, like if you've been watching my videos for a while and you're pretty confident that you understand the dynamics between men and women and you can psychologically diagnose what's going on, I encourage you to do my paid course, 100 Sides of Women, because it's the best test you're going to get. It features 10 real stories. Each story has 10 questions where you are challenged to go inside the mind of each person and explain psychologically what's going on for them. Then, of course, I give you the answer, and so it's incredibly informative and educational as well. It's quite long. There's 6.5 hours of video content, which in my mind just makes it incredible value for money. It only costs $50. There's a free trial so you can try it before you buy it. And there's a video in the description box below that explains how the whole thing works.